Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News Channel. Hello, Mavericks and new viewers from wherever you may be watching. If you're not familiar, you've probably had your head in the sand like an ostrich, but that ostrich story from up in Edgewood, B.C., it has taken on a life of its own. It's, I don't know, maybe it should have been cats, because this story seems to have more than 9 lives. It continues, and that's why tonight's thumbnail image on social media says, Edgewood Ostrich Terror Continues. The protesters are just not letting go of this thing. They continue to campaign and spread information online about this, and they're determined to do something. I'm not sure what the objective ultimately is. I do, but I'm not going to editorialize here at this point. What we are going to do tonight is, because this story just that the people behind it driving it will not let it die, we're going to give other stakeholders a voice, beginning tonight with a local resident, Randy Doncelar, who is going to join us, and guest journalist Angie Clowry, who has also done extensive work on this crazy ostrich story, of course, resulting in the cull of, well, who knows how many ostriches. There was a lot of confusion over how many ostriches were at this Universal Ostrich Farm in Edgewood, British Columbia. I think the final official count from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency was around 330 that were ultimately culled. And the impact from it continues to this day, and the political activism around it continues to this day, and also the fundraising. That should also be highlighted. So when we come back, we're going to bring you more information to try to get you closer to the truth by bringing forward tonight in this first installment of in what I think will be a series of new reports on this crazy ostrich story from out in Edgewood, British Columbia. We're going to bring a stakeholder, a local resident, forward tonight to share his story, to talk about the impact that this circus that was created out there has had on his community, on him, and on his family. So stay with me, because this, I think this is going to take some strange twists and turns, and we're, I think, about to reveal some information that you probably haven't heard anyplace else before.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are Maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Let's bring our guests for tonight on. First up, Angie Clowry, guest journalist. Welcome, Angie.
Hello. Thanks for focusing on this.
Yeah, well, that's what we do around here. We get involved in stories where people get upset. The hate messages will be flowing soon, right here at in Maverick News. Randy Doncelar, local Edgewood resident. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate you doing what you're going to do tonight, just in sharing your personal story, because that will help us all get closer to the truth.
Thank you for having me.
So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw it over to you, Angie, first of all, because I know that you have done extensive work on this. Like I keep saying, this crazy ostrich story, because it is weird and crazy. Maybe you can just help our viewers who maybe have not seen what's going on. There are people out there, believe it or not, who are not familiar with the story. So can you just give us the Reader's Digest condensed version of what this story is about for people? Because you have all the background.
So there has been a farm in Edgewood, right on the side of the highway as you're coming into right off Highway 6 and down to the Inanaquilin Valley Road. It's been there for 35 years. There's been a lot of civil court action. There's been a lot of challenges, a lot of investment misappropriations, we'll say, alleged thefts, fraud, you name it. And it's been a challenge on the community, I would say, and Randy can speak more to this, for the past 10 to 15 years. I have been told, I think it was 17 years today, one of their larger sheds fell and allegedly, unfortunately, killed, I think, 35 birds at that time. So that the community was heavily supportive in that, and that has changed over the years. So what's happened is, in December of last year, they got H5N1, and it's noted January 3rd on the local Edgewood Facebook page that, in fact, they did test positive after 48 hours from the owner's son posted it on the Edgewood page. And, they were expected to cull their own birds. And, mid-month, a year ago, when we're sitting about this time last year, they decided not to, and they decided to fight it. And there's just been a lot of tension over the last couple of years. And I'm a summertime resident. I have a local lake camping spot there. So when this started, I've been watching it the whole time. And to be transparent, when they were sharing all this information, I think last February, I did coach them on the fact of a sister of the farm who is next door neighbor. I coach them to just have one group and share it from one group, because I host a couple of Facebook groups and it was coming all over the place and it was overwhelming. And so I was saying, like, just have one person, be the voice. At that time, they didn't want to. And then it just started to snowball. So
if I may, just to kind of fill in some holes for people, December 2024, ostriches at Universal Ostrich Farm, Edgewood, British Columbia, begin to die. The family doesn't report it, the owners of the farm. They let this sort of linger. It appears, according to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they really kind of tried to hide it, prevent anybody from finding out about it. But because so many birds were dying, it became evident to other people who live in the community that this was going on. There was an anonymous report, according to the CFIA, that went into the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, who had, prior to this, not really taken any notice of this at all. It was a complaint that brought the CFIA out to the farm, where they did indeed find carcasses laying around, being eaten by wildlife, not being properly disposed of. And as a result, they tested several of the birds. They did PCR testing, came back positive. They did additional testing, sent samples to a lab, I believe in Winnipeg, if I'm not mistaken. They confirmed not only that the birds were infected with H5N1 bird flu, but also identified the specific strain, which was a very unique strain, which was also associated with a human death at I believe, a chicken poultry operation out in Ohio. How that particular strain got from one side of the continent to the other, still kind of a mystery, but there it was. And so they identified the specific strain of the bird flu as well. They ordered the farm to cull the animals, and the farm refused. They offered them compensation of $3,000 a bird, but instead the farm elected to engage in ongoing marathon lawfare, which stretched out over an entire year. It resulted in massive protests on the farm, protesters coming out. They did all kinds of crazy things out there with concerts and fundraisers and all kinds of shenanigans. There was even an incident where one of the local residents, a neighbor, apparently or allegedly was doused with gasoline. The home was doused in gasoline. The person who was involved was, I guess, threatening to set the place on fire. There was a subsequent police investigation. That's just one of the crazy things that we're told were efforts to intimidate local residents. There was all kinds of crazy reporting. Obviously, for anybody with half a brain, you could see that a lot of the stuff that was coming out in social media was just outright straight lies and misinformation and propaganda of some kind. We had this strange intervention from U.S. government authorities, RFK Jr., Dr. Oz, getting involved in the whole thing, trying to apply pressure to stop the cull and point fingers of blame at the Canadian Food and Inspection Agency. It was clearly some sort of politically motivated intervention. And through all of this, the local residents, there was a little bit of coverage, but really, you guys, Randy, never had an adequate voice. I think partially because people were afraid to speak up, also because the narrative on the activists' side, which were, the activists made up primarily of the freedom movement in Canada, activists with them, but somehow they became animal rights activists through all of this. And the local residents, I think, felt very intimidated. A little bit of mainstream media coverage was granted to local residents, but you guys never really got your voice out. And how could you compete with the emotion that was driving this entire narrative of just save the ostriches, which were personified, turned, in the minds of people into pets of some kind instead of livestock. And through it all, you guys, I think, ended up suffering in ways that most people are not really aware of. So that's why you're here tonight. And maybe I can just throw it over to you for an initial comment on how was this affecting you while all of this crazy animal rights activism was going on out at the farm?
Well, I think, Rick, you make a great point when you say that their social media presence and how they delivered that took the whole narrative, and our community didn't have a voice. And throughout all this, from the beginning, back at early last January to today, we still haven't had that voice, and we feel we've had anger, concern not just for ourselves but for our neighbors, everybody in this town. For me, my number one paramount concern is the wildlife. Frustration. We did get a little bit of a brush over from mainstream media, involved in the group meeting, involved with a Radio West interview out of CBC, out of the Okanagan. Global Vancouver, I did an individual interview with them. And it's even through that, there was a backlash from the online presence from the Universal Ostrich Farm and their supporters, singling us out. Who is this guy? Where does he live? And that just played more into, for me, my concerns and worry, not just for myself, but for my wife, for my dog, and for my family in general, because, I got a pretty obvious last name. But I really feel for what it's done to this town. And what this farm has done to this town. And people might think I'm going to be out of line here, but I don't apologize it for 1 minute. This farm has done nothing for this community over the years. a community that does nothing but give and try to make things better. We try to mind our own business, but we pull together in times of need or crisis. And the position they put us in is, to me, reprehensible. Like, I don't know how they can justify doing what they did and facing locals. Yeah, that's kind of a big broad brush on a lot of overall emotions in general.
Okay, and so just to kind of dissect that a little bit, why were local residents afraid to speak up? Why did you feel intimidated? Was there doxing going on? Were there threats going on? I know for sure that the protesters were, trying to shut down businesses that were doing anything to support that, or even do business with the CFIA. If there was a company renting cars or vehicles to police or to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they would dox that company online and try to get people to not, patronize them. The company that was providing dumpsters and fencing to the government, that company was doxed by the activists. But I think there were also threats being leveled at some of the people in the community. Is that true? That's what we've been hearing.
There were veiled threats, I would say. As midsummer when I did my interview with Global Vancouver, of course, online, a lot of who was Randy Doncelar, where does he live? Comments about that. Maybe I need to be educated or informed. And that's just me. I do know other individuals, and earlier on in this, in early spring, when this really started to take a life of its own, folks would go up past the junction area. Angie referred to that as Highway 60 and Auckland Valley Road, and then the turn off down to the farm. Well, they had sentries stationed up there, and if you stopped, they'd video you. They'd have their phones out and video you. They'd be down at the store. There were some confrontations at the store with locals who did not support the farm. And when, the supporters would give those folks down there the thumbs up, the locals would give them the thumbs down. Well, then, there would be a confrontation. If you weren't with them, you were against them. And it didn't take a lot of that for the word to get out. And with the social media presence and what was going on, the locals, a lot of us seniors, vast majority seniors, had a real concern. A lot of reference made to, if this was 50, 60 years ago, we'd take care of this ourselves. But you know what? That's not the way we live in our society today. And sometimes I think, unfortunately, but having said that, there were justified concerns. And one of the real concerns for these folks was, we've been through the pandemic, and say what you want to say about it, and there's different views on that. These folks here had a genuine concern for their health and safety with that farm and the H5N1 and the identified strain. Very concerned. And they knew, and this isn't talked about a lot in mainstream media. It's not talked about by our politicians. It has been brought up by some of the academics, like our respected scientists and virologists, that this can have a huge impact on our wildlife. And our wildlife, we have raptors and eagles, hawks, owls, vultures, and then a list of all our other feathered wild birds, mice, rats, cats. That they all access that. That's a feeding site for them when there's dead animals in an uncontained, non-enclosed environment, which this farm has always been. And I think in a lot of ways we took it for granted, and we absolutely shouldn't have. And this is maybe a lesson for other communities, that hopefully they don't go through the same thing as we've gone through here and what we continue to go through. If those birds had not been culled, they talk about herd immunity. I don't care. They can still contract avian flu. And with not proper containment, the wildlife can still get in, and it will, and it has. They talk about how the ducks brought this to the farm in last fall, and I don't argue that. But why were the ducks there? there was a food source. They're open air feeding those ostriches so the ducks come in. They did nothing to control that. That just, I don't know, it infuriates me to think how they talk about wanting to help farmers in this country. They're the saddest examples of what farmers should be doing. Just angers me to think that reputable farmers would operate such a way.
And because the CFIA, after issuing the Cull order, also turned the farm into a quarantine zone. They also gave the farm a bunch of orders that they were supposed to comply with, like putting netting over the the area where the ostriches were kept, especially the pond where they would go to get water, because that was attracting and always has attracted waterfowl, ducks, and they were throwing food out for the ostriches, which would also attract other animals, including ducks. And you're right to point out that the ostriches, even if they don't appear to be sick, they can be efficient carriers of H5N1, even if they themselves do not appear to be, or don't appear to be symptomatic. So they can spread it to other animals, which is one of the reasons CFIA said, put up netting. And the farm never complied with any of that. They didn't comply with any of the orders from the CFIA at any time.
Yeah, I have my opinion on that, and it's shared by many. And Angie, you've brought it up before, is that they didn't have the resources in people. They didn't have the financial capability to take care of that. And so they chose this route, weaponizing the court system, pulling in all these followers on social media, rather than take the high road and basically go to the CFIA and say, we just can't do this. We're just not equipped with this large of a population of birds to deal with this, and try to work with the CFIA. But that was apparent really early into it, that they were going to spin this into something else, and they've done a damn good job at it.
And you touched on something important. It was apparent that they didn't have the financial resources to comply with some of these orders, like putting up netting. And these financial hardships date back many, many years, became really pronounced when the pandemic broke out, because this was originally a farm that was producing ostriches for food. Mm-hmm. And when the pandemic came, they couldn't get their birds to market. They couldn't get them through the abattoir because the abattoir had staffing issues during the pandemic. And in a niche market like ostriches, they just had real financial problems. So they pivoted to research. And that's really when the weirdness really began, because they were, I guess, involved in some sort of COVID research where court documents show that they were injecting these birds with COVID antigens, which is not the core issue for the CFIA at all. But this is all stuff that is really where the weirdness comes in, because they were essentially operating some sort of an open air biolab with no permits from the government, no licenses of any kind, tucked away up there in kind of a more remote community in Edgewood, where you're out of sight, out of mind, doing their own thing without any real oversight. CFIA never comes around. Nobody really bothers them. So they're injecting these birds, and with the intention of having them generate COVID antibodies, which become present in the eggs, which they then apparently were going to sell to, or had been selling to, a lab out in Quebec. And then they were also involved with this university over in Japan, so they could produce sort of these.
But my question is
products. It was kind of weird stuff.
My question is, but were they? So if you look at the whole entire picture of it, and you go back for 40 years, so started in Alberta under Rocky Mountain Ostrich, changed to Columbia, now Universal Ostrich Farm. There's plenty of little companies underneath, and when one goes bankrupt, the other one opens up. That is the history of it. There are investors, there are former volunteers, there are what's called satellite ostrich farms who have all bought into this gravy train of an idea that you invest 12, 24, or $45,000. And at bare minimum, you're going to make $150,000 in a year. The issue is, if you look up CSO, now in British Columbia, not all provinces have this, but CSO is Court Services Online. You look that up, you go to civil court, you can put the business name in there, the last names, you will see more than 69 civil suits. Now, I have no issue if someone gets divorced, you get in a car accident, those kind of things. But when a business or a business owner has 69 different civil suits, then you have to question anything else they're sharing with us, right? Mm-hmm. So that's been my story since I think I started sharing it in September. And the reason why I really didn't want to get involved, A, it's not my place. B, my parents are probably not going to be happy with me. But what happened is some of the locals were too scared to go to their own doctor's appointments. And Randy's right. The majority of people there are seniors. So when I heard one of our family friends was scared to go to their own doctor's appointment because there's a bunch of yin-yangs at the end of the road, I literally spoke up. At that time, I arranged for Randy to go and have an interview with a couple of other locals. They were going to do it anonymously so that we could try to get the story out in the community. Because yes, we have these small pockets and these small groups of people, but we're trying to educate those that are just on the outside. Now, you don't have to, like, everyone wanted the birds to live. But if you knew and you checked the court documents and you saw there's no quarantine place at all, they could have moved them to another 120 acres that one of the owners owned. They should have had proper fencing. They should have put up a wildlife netting. But the big picture is, you know, when they're complaining, they're blaming the elderly neighbor, saying that she's the one who called it in, when there's literally 69 dead birds that are tits up in the field. Like, you have to understand what that looks like. And reports have that birds were being slaughtered and put in their incinerator before that. So how many birds were there? They didn't know how many birds they had. Did they know how many died? And the issue with this is when they went and they sold the birds, the breeding birds, to another farm, after 1 year old, they would bring them back as yearlings and they would pay them $3.50 a pound. So that's why all of these young birds were there. And those are the ones that died, that, you know, are owed to, I believe, a man in Fort St. John and other people. So it's been a Ponzi scheme from the get-go that started almost 40 years ago with an investment fraud. And you can look this up too. If you look up BC Securities Farm, Ostrich Farm, Alberta, it shows up there. There's a document. Now, there's never been criminal charges, but it is noted that this all went sideways. They raised $20 million. I think it was 2.7 million that came to the farm at that time. So people think this all doesn't matter, but it does. My history is what made me here today, right? I have been in the media on and off for 25 years. I have been a reporter, a journalist. I have been operations manager, all of those things. You know, what I've experienced brings me here today. And if you have 40 years of fraud, theft, and misinformation, and it's just being glorified today, plus you have an angry mob of 83,000 people behind pushing this angry mob, how does a community of 335 people have a voice? So that's why I started to speak up. And hopefully encourage other people, like hopefully we are going to have others on this week to share their story, because their voices matter. Their voices, in my opinion, matter much more than mine, matter much more than anyone else who has an opinion that's across Canada. This affects this small community. It's definitely divided. I'm well aware that many people want this to be gone. And people, while they say it's government overreach, if it was government overreach, they would have arrested everyone. They would have said, get the hell out of here. They would have, you know, taken everything down earlier, in my opinion. And I'm open to being wrong and educated, but I think it's government underreach. February 2nd of last year is when they should have been slaughtered. They were not. They let this gong show go until November 6th.
Sure, because the farm owners, the ostrich owners, were given due process, maximum due process. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. Like, there wasn't a Supreme Court hearing, but I mean, it literally went from appeal to appeal to appeal to appeal to all the way to the Supreme Court, which then decided that it wasn't a case that, deserved to be heard. but it went went the distance, man. Like it really did. So the government really, like, you can sit there and bitch and complain and moan all you want about government overreach, but this thing dragged on for a year,
And
which
you just
is,
have to
in
take a
my
look
mind,
at the
incredible.
documents. Look at the court documents. This research that they're involved in, there's no research. They gave a business plan that potentially they can make $4 billion. So anyone that they've reeled in on this, they're going to save lives. They're going to be using that. That's bullshit. Like, show me the money. Show me what, like, where is all of this?
Yeah,
Like,
here's the, you sent me these pamphlets
yeah.
today, or this pamphlet. Do you want to just tell people what this is about?
Basically, this is showing what all the ostriches can be used for. So essentially, and we were given the same spiel, our family, 36 years ago. So the birds can be 100% used, from the eggs to the leather to their feathers. And at the time we were told their eyes could even be potentially used. That's not correct. But a big thing is the oil. So it's basically saying here, comparing it to beef, to ostrich, and how much more profitable it is. But this all information is not correct.
And this is stuff that the farm, these are pamphlets the farm was distributing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And I got this from one of the satellite farmers that was in business with them that received, I believe, 6 ostriches. They also sold dog treats. And, I know that even anyone I talk to that's not a fan of the farm that's used the ostrich oil says it's great for skin. So, that's the one thing that they can say, is that the ostrich oil is supposed to be great. But
yeah, because they were trying to promote sort of natural health products, not, stuff approved by the FDA or Health Canada, not those kinds of pharmaceuticals, although the research they were engaged in on the COVID side, if it had come to fruition, could have, and I think their intent was to have it result in the production of some sort of pharmaceutical products. I don't think they were opposed to that at all. They were after whatever money they could get through any kind of government grants or through any kind of partnership or business arrangement with companies, including Breathe Medical, which I did do an interview with one of the executives of that company, which is not in business now, but they approached a company in British Columbia to see if they could. Well, they did have an intent to purchase this technology of embedding antibodies into masks to prevent COVID. But the business deal never came through because they couldn't prove any of the science.
So here's the thing. It actually is proven, and it actually is documented. The issue is all of this research has happened in 2008 and 2009 with Dr. Ostrich from Tokyo. So before all of this went haywire, in late September or late August into September, I found all this information online. And what I believe happened is that they found it too, and they mirrored it, because no one has any documentation of this. Wouldn't you say, when you're going to save your farm and your birds, wouldn't you add something of this? There has to be something there you can share. But
well, I mean, but Angie, I mean, this stuff is referenced in court documents that they filed. So if they weren't doing any of this, that would, I think, in itself constitute some sort of crime. But anything we're talking about here where there may be any kind of illegal activity has not been proven in court. So these allegations would have to still be proven in court. And all I can reference here is what is in court documents, what they've referenced as actual evidence. And they stayed in there, and they even brought Dr. Pelican from University of British Columbia to, and he did comment on the use of COVID antigens, saying that this was going on and that there was some research that had been done. There was research related activity that had been going on out of the farm, but how extensive it was, not sure.
But the masks and the nasal sprays were put into production in Japan.
But never FDA approved, never approved by Health Canada. They weren't able to prove the science here. And it's still it's dicey science at best. They haven't really proven anything over there that there's real efficacy in doing this. And he was still experimenting with this stuff to make the masks glow if they came into contact with H5N1. So how effective they really were still remains to be seen. There's some science behind it. The actual research was done out of the university, but how effective? Not effective enough for Health Canada to approve it. Not effective enough, or not proven enough for Breathe Medical to enter into production on the masks, because in the interview that I did with the former chief executive financial officer for the company, he said, they just didn't have the science to back it up, and so he couldn't put it into production because they never would have had the certifications for it.
Because in Japan, though, and of course, everything is all kind of garbled now, and so many people attacked the doctor. But before everything came out, or everyone got focused on it, the country of Japan, and you can still look at this, congratulated Dr. Ostrich and the Kyoto University for getting that out. And I believe it started in January of 2020, and it was published in March 30th of 2020. So by the time the farm allegedly is doing all this, it's 18 full months after it's been published and shown
except that where it was published matters. And but he went to publications where you can pay to have these things published. It's not like he was publishing in first tier, universally recognized medical journals. He was going to places where you can get your articles published to give it the appearance of credibility. And then the products that he ended up producing were in line with these natural health products like hair tonics, skin creams, nasal sprays, the efficacy of which still remains very questionable. And that's what these people were involved with. So, and that's the kind of stuff that was being sold here in Canada, with no Health Canada approvals, under the umbrella of holistic or natural health products. And that's not the same as getting something from Bayer or Pfizer or some other big pharmaceutical company. It's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum. And just as a matter of note, the CFIA, Health Canada, the government of Canada, in the last 2 to 3 years has really been coming after that market in order to crack down on people making false claims with products like that. And that has been a big issue within the freedom movement itself, where they're trying to push back on the government. Even if you we had an interview with the gentleman who heads up the National Citizens Inquiry, because that's been one of his pet projects as well, pushing back on this, because he's been ringing the alarm bell, trying to convince people that the government's going to be making it difficult to get vitamins, and for small independent retailers to sell things like vitamins. So, I mean, it's this ongoing battle. It comes down to even pasteurized milk, where these farms don't want to comply with government regulations on whether they should be allowed. That we don't believe in pasteurized milk. We want to sell raw milk to the public direct from the farm. But of course, that's dangerous because people can get sick and die from that. Should there be regulations preventing that kind of thing from going on? There are, but the government tends to look the other way when people want to go and purchase that stuff. Mm-hmm. But this is kind of at the heart of the matter too. This is one of the things that they're really fighting for, we're fighting for through the ostrich farm, is just less government regulation. Randy, throw it over to you to just get your thoughts after all of this coming out.
Well, I mean, with the identifying themselves as a biolab, so to speak, and they were injecting these ostriches with COVID antigens, and this was this was ongoing while they were still selling products and selling products locally.
Yep.
Now, that to us as a local community raised, I mean, this came to light during this past year, and we're more than a little bit angry over that, simply because the risk they put us under. They didn't really care about our community. And so it's really, even cast more of a light on the depths they'll go to just to try and advance their own interests. They don't give a shit about us.
That's a key point. Maybe I'll get you to comment more on that, because by not complying with the CFIA, by not cooperating with the CFIA, by refusing to cull the birds, there's a critical time period in there where they're trying to prevent the spread of the virus, right? And by resisting and not cooperating and leaving the birds out in the open, it externalizes the risk. Is the issue, right? It takes their risk, which they're saying, these are our birds, this is a property rights issue, which is what they really centered their legal arguments around, right? This is our property. You don't have any rights here, government, to come in and do anything. But it affects other property owners, their neighbors, the entire community, adjacent communities, maybe even the whole country, because they're externalizing that risk. It's not just then about their property and their property rights. It's about your property, Randy, and the impact on your family and other farmers and other livestock and even wildlife. So you want to comment on that?
You tell me why this year, starting in the spring, we never seen any eagles at the top end of the valley, down mid-valley. There was always a good population. Down the lane I live, we always seen a nesting pair of eagles. There was a couple that were just to the south of us. We don't see them. Coincidence? I think not. I don't think at all. And my brother-in-law has the neighboring property to the ostrich farm, or one of them, as well as neighboring Lois Woods, the lady that was attacked by Tim Regan. Not alleged. It was Tim Regan. I was there that morning before the RCMP arrived. But it does put the entire valley at risk, not just our wildlife, which is my main concern.
Pause there for a second. I just want to make sure we cover this properly. Who is Tim Regan?
He's the fella that initiated the attack on Lois with the gasoline.
Okay, just for legal purposes, was he formally charged?
Mm-hmm.
He has been.
Okay.
He's in court tomorrow in Vernon Court, as a matter of fact.
All right. So again, it's a matter that still is before the courts, innocent until proven guilty, still has to be proven in a court of law, right? So that's the charges against him, but we can't say that he did it. He has to go through the courts. So I'll just let you continue.
Yeah. Okay. So it definitely puts our wildlife population at risk. Our domesticated livestock, whether it's we have probably a half a dozen beef producers in the valley here. Then smaller farms that have beef, poultry, as in geese, chickens, turkeys, pigs. It puts them at risk. And when you understand the science and understand how this disease is transmitted, it can be transmitted by, a mouse goes in there, comes out, gets eaten by an eagle. The eagle goes and dies by my brother-in-law's farm, has a disease. Their cat feeds on it. It's a cycle, and that cycle. I mean, will we ever be able to break it? I don't know. It's going to be with us, but we have to do what's in the best interest to try and contain it. And in this case, there was an extremely, I guess I could use the word, poor job. I have concerns with the CFIA as well, but I felt they were handcuffed to a large degree and unable to do what they had to do to try to protect our wildlife, try to protect our domesticated animals, and protect us in the long term.
And really, I think that's the key is they were really, the focus here is to prevent the spread from farm to farm to farm, to protect the food supply, while the protesters are out there saying that it's the government trying to destroy local farms. It's the government trying to destroy our food supply because some of these people believe that the government wants to starve us all to death and depopulate the earth or something. And so they're just of the mind that the government was working to destroy the farmers by trying to deal with the H5N1 outbreak at this particular farm, which is kind of flipping it upside down. The government is actually trying to prevent the spread to other farms. Wildlife is sort of a factor that is a little bit beyond their control, except that that's why they issued the order to quarantine those birds, to put up the netting, to minimize the risk of other wildlife coming in. But it really did have an impact on other area farms, didn't it?
Absolutely, and we're still under quarantine. And you make a good point. You can't they can't really control the wildlife. And there was a lot of argument coming from supporters saying, well, why don't they cull the ducks and take care of the ducks? Well, you know what? You can control your domesticated livestock. You cannot control wildlife. And that's a point that goes past a lot of people. They just don't understand that aspect of it.
And the other thing they didn't understand, because there was so much, I think, not so much misinformation, but misdirection, is that people were being told by a lot of the activists and the online streamers that, well, people aren't dying from this. This is, but the issue was really not about in people becoming infected to get sick, because transmission to humans is not common with this strain at this point. But there has been, there have been a few incidents of it, so that's a concern. But the real objective is to prevent the spread of the flu from farm to farm to farm, to protect the food supply and to protect the markets and to protect the ability for farmers to export their products as well.
That's right. Yeah, it's and it's something that I personally would bring up in conversation with locals throughout this past year, bring up in discussions online with other people. Lots of friends and coworkers that live in other parts of the province and the country would reach out to me and wonder what the hell was going on, and they wondered what the government was up to. Well, when I painted more of a factual picture, they had a better understanding, and the information they get just didn't come from the farm, so to speak, but they seen politicians going to the farm and supporting the farm. They seen, when I say politicians, I mean our MP. Now, we're very disappointed and angry at our MP. We feel abandoned. He never gave us a voice. He sure gave them a voice. That's our member of parliament, Scott Anderson. I mean, David Eby, even, our premier of his province, for crying out loud. Back in May, when the Cull order was issued, he was coincidentally doing a press release in Vancouver or Victoria, I'm not 100% sure. And this question was brought up by Global, I guess it was, asking him where they were with this ostrich farm thing in Edgewood and the CFAA's Cull order. And he made a statement, and I can't believe it. The ignorance that was shown when he said that they were reaching out to the CFIA, have heard nothing back, but rest assured, and this isn't the exact quote, but pretty much what he said, rest assured, he and his Minister of Environment, along with all of British Columbians, have a deep concern with the actions of the CFIA and the Cull order, and to bring this on these poor, hardworking farmers. And this was the premier of our province. What an uneducated statement to make. And so people hear this, and locally we think, well, Christ, we're climbing Mount Everest to try and get our voices heard. And will we ever get there? We don't know. But it's been exceedingly frustrating. And I speak for myself, but I speak for the vast majority of locals in regards to this. And it's been a real different year. We'd like to see it get behind us. I share the concerns that you brought up at the onset of your broadcast, in that where is this going? I think it's coming to another community somewhere else, and I find that most unfortunate. It shouldn't, but these, and I don't want to. I think there's good people in the freedom movement trying to get government to back off from a lot of things they do, but government overreach is just that term that this group grabbed onto. And so are they really freedom fighters? No, they're not. If they were freedom fighters, they'd be listening to us. They'd be allowing our voice. If we're not with them, we're against them. How is that freedom? You want to be able to speak from your platform, but as soon as I try and get up on my platform to contradict or present other facts or arguments against, I'm doxxed. I'm a bad person. That's not freedom. Not in this country. That's freedom in other countries, I guess, if you will. But so that really speaks to who these people are and what they're about.
Oh, yeah.
If we can just touch on that for a moment. So I would suggest that the majority of those that live in the Arrow Lakes area lean conservative. I myself, I'll admit, I'm a conservative. And so when all of these freedom folks are saying, don't listen to CBC, they're painting the wrong picture. Well, guess what? This picture was absolutely painted with BS. So everything that they told us, they didn't acknowledge everything that was in the court documents. They haven't documented the fact that, and I'll just to correct you, Rick, my understanding is the meat went south, literally 15 years ago. That's where the market was for ostrich meat. And so there was a slaughterhouse in Lumbee. That individual also owned ostriches. That went under. So when that went under, the farm has been struggling for 10 to 15 years. There's been multiple times when the farm has went and asked for loans, has said that there's the birds won't get fed. There's all of these things. But if you're complaining about the CBC because you don't like them, you have chosen to listen to the other side of things that is not giving you all of the correct information, that is creating drama, that is throwing themselves into crowds and creating incidents so they get shares, clicks, and that is clickbait, friends. So if you think CBC does that, this crew of yahoos that want to be influencers that absolutely chose not to tell the other side of the story, like, this is why I have to thank you. And so do other locals. You're the first person that actually listened, asked hard questions, held the farm accountable, and you've seen what happened there. They got up and left the broadcast. So I just want to thank you for that, but also challenge other people. Listen to the other side of things. Like I had multiple people upset at me that are in my hometown. So my hometown is 90 minutes away from Edgewood. And so they were throwing me under the bus for all these things, saying, you're upset because you've been financially taken advantage of from them. That's not correct. I did not get financially taken advantage of. But I can tell you in 2021, when the fires happened, I was asked to take bird feed to the farm and that they would pay me when I got there. So I phoned a friend in Edgewood and said, what's with this? And they said they don't have credit anywhere. So I can tell you, I can confirm since 2021 personally that they do not have credit, that they have to pay up front for things. And there's multiple stories like that. So it sucks. Farming is a hard business. I know that some people's barns look way better, than their houses do. But the issue is they've trampled over an entire community. The voices haven't been heard. And that's really why Randy and I are here today, is to hear that local perspective and to ask people to give us a chance and to hear, and not just me, go to the exposed group, the Universal Ostrich Farm exposed group, check in with other people, have a conversation, because if the conservatives and the freedom movement really want freedom, they have to listen to other sides. They have to listen to other people, and you have to be inclusive. And so you can get all upset at the DEI and the inclusive and all that, but if you're not willing to at least listen to people that are immediately being affected by this, then just get off it.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, if you believe in freedom, then you have to believe in freedom of speech. But I'll tell you, a lot of these live streamers, and you really you raised a very important point. A lot of these live streamers, they're not really engaging in free speech. They're engaging in malicious speech. They're engaging in provocateur journalism. They were purposefully, like accidentally on purpose, getting arrested in order to martyr themselves, in order to generate clicks and generate donations. They to highlight
They
themselves
were
as
paid to
victims,
be
right?
there. So
To-
if the conservatives don't like when liberals are paid to be somewhere, go and check in with all of those wannabe influencers. They were all paid to be there. It
Right.
might have only been $500. Like we have one poor gentleman trying to fix his truck and everything, who's been there for 2 months now, I think. Is it 2 months? No, just 1 month, like 2 months. You know, they were all paid to be there $500. You know, there was volunteers there, you know, that they should have got some money. I know there was a large donation given by a gentleman to help with the volunteers and such that were there, but they were paid protesters. So let's make that clear.
And paid influencers, paid protesters who were also influencers. Those are the people they were paying. Yeah.
That's another thing to touch on. I think is important from our community's perspective is Katie kept going on and on about peace, love, and that's what we're all about, and we don't promote violence or any of this. Well, there was no conditions put on who was coming there, and people showed up that had malicious intent, to be sure, and some definite loose cannons. And we've seen what happened to Lois Woods, some of the other shenanigans that were going on. We didn't know how far this could go, and this was an open invitation, not just to those, if I can use the word cavalierly, knowledgeable social media influencers, but people that were jumping on the bandwagon. And so you don't know who you're getting. And that was, that really had us, a lot of people were scared. Yeah, definite concern, a concern I had all along.
And a lot of the people, the public, many blinded by emotion when
Absolutely.
Things that were clearly lies were being spun up and distributed. I couldn't believe how many people were buying into things. What were your thoughts, Randy and Angie, when you started hearing things about liquefied birds, and birds being killed in contravention of the Supreme Court of Canada stay order, which was preventing, any birds from being culled until a decision was made on whether the court case would be heard at the Supreme Court level. And they're like, oh no, these birds are being killed now, and they're killing them off in the dead of night and liquefying the bodies and transporting them away in dumpsters. And I was like, this is such a load of crap. And people were still buying into it. So just give me your thoughts on when you started hearing that stuff. What were you thinking?
Asinine. A post from a local fella, nice guy. I like him, but he supported the argument that they were killing the birds on site, whether they be liquefied or whatever, and they were being taken to the Vernon dump. And so I made a comment to them. Well, where's the video? And he said, well, we've got video of it. I said, of dead ostriches being dumped in the Vernon dump. No reply back. This is what they feed on, the liquefaction, the meat, the grinding late at night above our house here. We live about 1.4 kilometers as a crow flies from the farm, and they're down there. But above us, there was I don't know if it was a BC timber sale logging show going on here late in the summer, fall. And of course, you have your faller bunchers up there and your processors going. Those boys start like at the wee hours of the morning, and they hear those noises. Well, they're putting that out there that they're grinding. There's these meat grinders going on. They can hear.
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna say names, okay? David Creighton, you are either a freaking psycho or a propagandist, because he was one of the main propagandists on that front. Redacted, they were running with this. They were showing pictures of what appeared to me to be like a manure spreader, saying that was a liquefier. I mean, What a load of shit like literally a
Yeah,
load of
really.
shit. And that's what they were showing. And people were believing this shit. I mean, literally showing a manure spreader. That's why I'm using the word. And this is like international media coverage. Ted Nugent. Okay, man, you got duped. But how are the locals supposed to compete against a media powerhouse like Ted Nugent, right? Who goes online and describes these ostriches as pets in order to gain, because somebody fed him information because he's a conservative influencer, and they were like, "Can you say something about these ostriches?" And he comes online and gives the whole song and dance about how it's government overreach and the awful, evil Canadian government. And how could they murder all these pet ostriches? They're not pets. Who has 400 freaking dogs as pets?
Uneducated people.
No.
Puppy mill.
Let alone ostriches, which are not pets really anyway. They're dangerous, actually. If you're not really careful with them, they can kill you.
Yeah, I mean, me, I got going on this back in near the end of March when one of the ostriches was shot by a sniper with a .22 planes the farm made, and then shortly thereafter, Cull and Big Bear Ross came out and had a video, and I have that video on file here, as well as his comment made on one of the posts, but made a statement and interviewed a young guy and his son from Alberta hunting turkeys, and said the local gun club, I hear, put a hit on these ostriches. And as a matter of fact, they decided it at one of their meetings. Well, the local gun club is our local conservation association, which I'm the president of, and I speak solely for myself, not our club. But having said that, and then to see where he said he actually had the email calling for the hit, I messaged him and called him out on it and asked him to correct it. Of course, no response. So I contacted Katie Pasitny via messenger and said, this better be redacted, taken down right away, because it's libelous and slander. And it was removed. But to this day, they still go on about that it was the local gun club that initiated this hit. And it's out there for the world. How do we fight that? I mean, we're a small club. We don't have the resources to hire lawyers to take this and take these. It would be just a waste of time to try to take them to court, to hold them accountable. And for what? Maybe just the locals to know that we won. Yeah.
And I saw the image of the ostrich that was allegedly shot from a drone and murdered. And I saw the picture released by Rebel News. And that didn't look like a gunshot wound to me at all. That looked like the throat had been slit.
Yeah, well.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think, and also if you look at, where the birds are to where someone actually could have done that, like there's an Edgewood sniper stickers and t-shirts for a reason, because we all know it's a freaking joke. We all believe the farm did it themselves, and we'll have some of the former volunteers tell you what happened those nights that those birds were unalived. So there's just so much to unpack. So you mentioned about, another one, Creighton, Viva Frey, Daisy, Rude Dude, Jim Kerr, all of these people, Drea, Rebel News, they all have this information. I have personally sent it to them all. I have Twittered them, whatever you want to call it, X now. I have all the information sent to them. Yeah. Not one of them have responded back. The only thing I received was an email from Rebel News Finance. Now, I don't know if that's their finance pay department or if there's a finance department of Rebel News, asking if they met me at the Edgewood campsite. And I said, no, it was not me. I have my own camping area nearby. Now, is someone else going to call me back or get in touch with me to talk to the locals? Because here's the thing. Everyone that I have spoke to has not talked to the locals.
Yeah.
So Rebel News has not. Blake Roberts, who is a staunch supporter, still sharing stuff today. He's also noted in there. Oh, sorry, I'm getting messages from some of the locals thanking for the shout out for the Edgewood Sniper Club. And we laugh at it because we know it's not true. And the farm is passionate about it because they say it's true. Well, you know what? We'll say that 300 people in the community, plus those that know what's going on, think that's a bunch of BS. And then you also mentioned, something else I was going to touch on. But the point being is all the right-leaning media, you're the only one who has gotten both sides of it, right? And there's the 7.5-hour interview that's extremely telling with Dr. Pellich. There's, other interviews where you tried to hold them accountable and they get up and they walk away. So if they are telling the truth, like, the truth doesn't have to hide. The truth can sit there and be seen.
Yep. And I have to tell you, I'm through this. I was so disappointed because some of these people I trusted. I thought they were credible. I believed in them. I watched them and thought the information that they had been sharing with me and the public for years had merit, only to find that they could be bought, or that they were duped, or for whatever reason, they were just sharing incorrect information, and in some cases outright lying. And that for me was incredibly disappointing. And when it's especially when it's coming from people who are like, you can't trust the mainstream media, don't watch them. And yet, what are we getting over here? It was just a pack of lies from the get-go all the way down. And why were they all able to go out to that farm? Because they were getting paid. That's why. And generating funds online, and just, it was just, for me, a giant disappointment.
So someone mentioned here, why not tell them about the general store and all the money made from the supporters? Well, let me tell you about something else. So talk about how not many people came camping this summer. I personally did not come all that many times to my place because I didn't want to deal with all the riffraff, because we don't know who they are. We don't know where they're coming from. And when I went to pick up my RV, there was some yin yang up there and obviously had taken a air conditioner out of one of the RVs and is going up there, I'm assuming, lifting things. So when you bring all of these people there, and then many of them are now homeless. They don't have a home to go to. They're receiving mail at the farm.
Right.
So if you want to talk about how well the store did, it's awesome. I'm sure Tanvir is extremely happy with what's happened. The issue is that's not a local store anymore. But also, too, how many times were those poor employees harassed from the people that came in there? Because they're new to the community. They've only been there for 2 years and treated poorly by many of them. And then if you don't agree with the farm, if you're not on board for it, they all get hassled. So is it such a great thing? No, it's not to have that many people there. And I try to explain this. In rural communities in Canada, specifically like Edgewood, Folkier, Burton, Nakusp, even Lumbee, people don't want a bunch of looky-loos coming around. There's a reason they live there. Like Randy's family is there for generations. My friends and family there for generations. They choose to live there because it's quiet. And so, I apologize to those who want this story to end because they feel it's promoting it. My dad even says that. The more we talk about it, the more people may hear about it and continue to donate. But I think that's been my story of let's get out there and let's tell the local side, or at least a different side, so that people aren't all still thinking that this is a good investment, because it's not. It's investing in something that isn't true. It's investing in something that has had GoFundMe's previously taken down because they were fraudulent. It's been, receiving $200,000 grants for elk fencing that has not gone anywhere. It's receiving, investment money to buy a piece of property that, instead of keeping it for the locals, was sold to a mill, and the money invested from the locals was kept, and so was the money from the mill. So there's multiple frauds, and this is all in court documents. I'm not speaking out of turn here. CSO Court Services Online for BC. You look in it and click the civil, hit partial, put all the business names and their last names in there. It's there for everyone to see. 69 civil court cases.
Yeah, but this is technical stuff. This isn't emotional, and that's why the other side won the battle of the narrative. Because it was just like, you got to save the ostriches, got to save Sarah, you got to save Spirit, the ostrich, all, as they were giving them names to personify them. And that's what you were up against, Randy.
Anthropomorphism is at its finest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's take a little break and we'll come back on the other side and continue this. And, as much, I think I've been talking a lot, but that's also to convey background information. And I'm still really interested in learning more about Randy's personal experience and the impact on the community out there in Edgewood. So stay with us and we'll be right back on the other side of this.
Brightleaf Innovations is excited to offer our newest investment opportunity, the Turn Easy Bed Storage Solution.
Turns with a touch, spins all the way around. Every little thing you need is easy to be found. No more clutter, no more mess on the floor. Just spin it, reach it, you don't search anymore. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. Custom shelves for your books or your tech. Cozy space for your treasures to protect. Built-in power when you need to recharge. Smart design that makes your bedroom feel large. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. Designed and developed by Brightleaf Innovations. Proudly Canadian and patent pending in North America. Turn Easy Bed transforms how you live.
To learn more about this innovative new product idea and exciting investment opportunity, call 519-784-0222 or visit brightleafinnovations.com.
And we're back. And there's nothing wrong with questioning what the CFIA does or the government. There's nothing wrong with reviewing the policy, the Cull policy. A lot of people think that maybe that should be adjusted or that a different approach might be taken. And that's a discussion that has actually been ongoing for a long time. Nothing wrong with questioning all of that to see if maybe the time has come to adopt a different policy or adjust things. That's what a program like this is partially about. That's what, I think this science is about. But what was going on out of that farm? It had very little, in my view, to do with the ostriches. After, reviewing all the information, immersing myself in a story I never wanted to become involved with at all, because this was political from really very close to the beginning of this thing, and the impact that it had on the local residents, on the community, on the local economy, and other farms. It has been dramatic, and it hasn't really been a story that's been effectively told. So, Randy, that's really why you're here. So let's focus a little bit more on that to get an idea of what kind of impact this had. I mean, the general store, I guess, made some money because a lot of protesters came out for their fundraisers and their concerts and these other circus-related activities. But the community suffered in other ways, right? Like I think there was a local campground that suffered, other businesses, quality of life suffered. Can you just elaborate and share that with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I'm glad that our local store was able to, at least there was somebody that came out at the end of it that there was some benefit to them. That's great and good on them. I hold nothing against them on that. But I'm not sure, Angie, if I caught that comment correctly, but one of the commenters said, well, if it wasn't for the supporters, the store wouldn't have done as well. Well, that's great, but if it wasn't for the supporters, we'd have had the people at the campground, I hope anyway, and we'd have had a peaceful community and we'd be there to support the store ourselves. That's not what it's all about. Have they ever missed the mark on that one? So, I mean, that just kind of propagates the anxiety, so to speak, that locals will feel hearing things like that. Yeah, it's definitely been taxing for us. We just want our community back to the way it used to be. We're a community that's small. We're tight. It's not that we don't have our differences or disagreements, but those become resolved, or we agree to disagree. Angie said we've got probably in this valley a large and the Arrow Lakes a large conservative support, which I tend to think is the case. But then we have some liberal supporters too. I like the centrist way, a little bit centrist right leaning, a little bit centrist left leaning, and I think we'd all agree, the locals too, that you made the statement, Rick, that the CFIA can learn from this, and I hope they do a post-mortem and they publicize it so we can all hear, is there a better way to handle this? Now, understanding the bigger picture, this would have to be something that would be viewed by by our world trade partners, but to carry that on a little bit more is to the actual cull itself. Could that have been done differently? I don't know. I personally feel that they were in a bad situation no matter what they did. But Eddie's saying that the vast majority of locals, while they did not support the farm, they just wish those ostriches didn't have to be culled. And it was a sad day when that happened, whether you felt, and I felt, that it was necessary. I still I had no good feelings about it. I sat out here at night and I listened to those shots, and you knew what was happening, and it wasn't nice. And then the next morning, it's over. It's over. I didn't hear any shots in the morning, by the way, but you have that sense that it's over, but it's truly not. We're whether all those grifters moved on and the squatters move on from the farm and it all ends tomorrow, we're still going to have a hangover for a long time in our town, and it's going to take a lot of discussion, and we need good, thoughtful discussion, not discussion based on emotions, which is what the Ostrich Farm's whole deal was about, getting people on side from emotions. We did see the emotional response at times in our community, which, a lot of us tried to downplay and get people back on track and looking at the big picture, looking at facts. So it has been a tumultuous year, one year that we hope like hell will never have to go through again, and a year that I hope no small community will ever have to go through again. But
it's important for people to just keep this in perspective. As much as the protesters were hell bent on trying to get video of the cull taking place. They wanted video of the blood because they wanted the photo op. But the people in our society today have been so sheltered that they think that milk comes from the supermarket. Every day, cows, pigs, chickens, all kinds of livestock is slaughtered. These animals are killed so we can eat them.
Yes.
These ostriches were originally there to be a food source. The farm used to send them to abattoirs to be slaughtered. And Katie told me, the daughter of Karen Esperson, one of the owners of the farm, who became the spokesperson, because it was reference made to her without explaining who she is. She told me in the interview, and so did Karen, but Katie told me that when they were slaughtering the birds, they used halal method, which a lot of people in the freedom movement, I think for ideological and religious reasons, are probably opposed to and probably were not aware. But that was just a little piece of information that she let slip out in the interview. I didn't even know it. She just came out with it. And that surprised me, because that really means that they slit the throats of the birds and let them bleed out.
Yep.
So I don't know how humane that is, but is that more humane than what the CFIA ended up doing to them? These birds were livestock, and people need to keep that in perspective. They were not pets. And as much as people don't like it's uncomfortable for people to realize that farm animals are killed every day. That is what happens. If you're going to McDonald's, your burger came from a cow and the cow was slaughtered. So keep it in perspective, people. They just wanted to show you the blood, and when they couldn't show you the blood, they're still tapping into your psyche through emotion by talking about the gunshots and they're using words like murder of these ostriches. These birds were not murdered, they were culled. And it's important to use the right words, because they're not using the proper words. They're using words that push emotional buttons, because what they were engaged in was an information warfare campaign. And that has had a negative effect on the community, because you guys now are suffering reputational damage. This is what Edgewood is known for now worldwide, is the crazy ostrich cull. And that that's going to have lasting negative repercussions for Edgewood, British Columbia, and your community of like 300 people. That's what you guys are known for now. What are your thoughts?
It's that part really didn't hit home until this fall, and we had a media individual tell us how this has gone around the world, places like Iran, China, Africa, and it became abundantly clear that everybody now knows where Edgewood is, and if they hear it, they think Edgewood, BC, Canada. Where's that? Well, what's the first thing you do? You go to your computer, you pull up Google Earth, and you type it in, and you'll find it pretty quick. So, is that going to stop the tourists? I don't know, but it does. It's going to have a lasting impact on what we really were all about, and a lasting impact on, I think, on who we are as people. We're good people. Most people in this valley have a good moral compass. They do the right thing and for the right reasons. And I think any kind of little voice we have had, that might be diminished in the view from some people that are on the fence or supporters that, these are these weirdos from Edgewood. I'm putting words in people's mouths here, but it's a big concern for me, and from what I can tell, a big concern for the rest of the locals. We can come together as a community again and heal, but what are we going to be viewed at from the outside? Because we did have tourism. We like to attract tourists. We love it when they come in and you get to meet people and ask where they're from and why did you come here? And it's great to see people come and enjoy and recreate in our backyards. But I think that may be affected from the outfall of this. I'd like to think over time that part will heal itself too. Mm-hmm. Time will tell.
I'm just looking in the chat here, and some people are questioning things. I think somebody is accusing you, Angie, of being a liar.
Mm-hmm. The interesting is everything that I talk about, I either say it's my opinion or there's court documents. So super easy to find. It's not my fault if you're not okay to Google CSO, court services online. Also, you're welcome to go to my Facebook, Angie Clowry. It's open. The first thing that's pinned there has the 40-year history of the farm.
There's too much in the chat. I can't do this every night. Way too many comments. Like, this is over on Rumble, not in the comments that you're seeing on your end, guys, because you're only seeing one channel, which is the haters channel.
Also, someone asked me to prove who got paid. We will have former volunteers on here over the next couple of days, and they can speak directly to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And, we've all I can do is get the information, give everybody a voice, bring it all together and then, like, I don't say we're giving people the truth, because more than one thing can be true at the same time, but we're trying to get people closer to the truth by giving them good information, not propaganda, and trying to cut through all of that. But we've had the propagandists on, we're having stakeholders on now, we have, the farm owners on. So I'm trying to get all the stakeholders over time here. And I think you've been doing the same thing, Angie. And, do you think that you're getting a more factual account or a clearer picture after all of this?
Well, my goal was just to educate those really in the Kootenays and the Okanagan who were misinformed. And I understand that people are animal lovers, as am I. I've had a couple of chickens over my life. I'm not scared of hard work. I've branded cattle. I've done it all. I think when I started sharing this, it's just to check in with people, have a conversation. That's all I'm doing. That's all we're doing here today. And I took some really challenging people on and had these conversations, and I want them to continue, because I think this is so important for us, especially with what's going on now in the world. Have a conversation. Don't just give your opinion. To touch on Trump for a minute, if you're really upset with Trump, maybe talk to a Latino who's left Bolivia, Colombia, Cuba, somewhere. Like, have these conversations. Ask the people who are directly affected, because I think, I work in the unhoused industry, and why I got in that is because I was sick and tired. I didn't understand why we had all of these people sleeping all over the streets. I got upset with it. I got inquisitive. 6 years later, I'm still working in that industry. I think in this day and age, we need to ask questions. We need to be quiet. We need to listen to the other side of things. And that's where my concern was. So we have some small groups. I think the one group got to like 6,000 people, the original exposed group. The other one, I think, is at 4,200. There's a smaller group for the locals in Edgewood, but even some people in the Edgewood area that host the group won't allow the locals to speak up and share their information. So they had to make their own enclosed group so they can speak freely about it. Like, that's just not fair. And also, too, I don't live in Edgewood. I live in Kelowna. I'm, 2 hours and 15 minutes away from all this. I'm definitely taken away. Does it affect me directly? No. Does it affect my friends and family? Absolutely. And I think that's what we need to do more of. And social media and everything, TikTok especially, has kind of given us a way where we can just be a bully and call people down and say that I have moonshine in a glass. Like, what a donkey move. It's water. Ask questions. Don't just give your opinion, because who wants to be around that? We've all had an old grandpa or an old uncle that talks over us all the time, that interrupts, that just wants to hear their own voice. That's what y'all are doing on social media. I do want to touch on the TikTok thing a bit, because I know we have a bunch of people watching on TikTok right now. And I can't share enough that there's so many people on TikTok that support the community of Edgewood. There's so many people from the left and the right that came together. Like, at one time I think there was, going by memory, there was like 1,600 of us watching when the bins were going allegedly to Vancouver and the birds were in them. And the girl was acting like a jackass, driving all over. Like, there was literally, I was on a live, I think there was 300 of us there watching another live with 1,300 people on it. So it's just mind-boggling how many people were invested in this. And some people took it personal, that they weren't involved in some of these conversations. Some people think that they have a right to this information. And where I say, it's just silly. Like, I get to go to the Edgewood store a couple times a year. Will I be confronted by people? Likely. Will I shut up about it? I won't now. And the funny thing is I should touch on this too. I was harassed a little bit because some people don't like me for whatever reason. Peace be with you. I'm okay to agree to disagree, and if you don't like me. But the interesting thing is when I said, and I called Randy about it, I said, you know what? I've been harassed too much. I'm not loving this. They're making threats. I got 2 messages from 2 locals that thanked me for speaking up and said, if it wasn't for, the CTV interview, if it wasn't for Rick, if it wasn't for, there's a third one, I can't think of who it is now. Oh, I guess the CBC, the local perspective has not been shared. And I can't say that enough, is like, all of this is just a big cloud and literally a reality TV show that many of us are watching, but it's affecting my friends and family that have lived in Edgewood all of their lives. And that's who I'm concerned about, as well as the other people up the valley who have, I believe there's 12 or 6, I think there's 12 people in the valley with cattle. There's at least 16 with backyard chickens, in the area. There's also a commercial chicken farm not too far away. All of these people are still on quarantine with their animals. And so this does affect it. And so when the spokesperson for the farm says there's no need to quarantine, the closest city is 155 kilometers away. Well, that's really giving the middle finger to your next door neighbors and to everyone up and down the valley that have animals, that have chickens. And we've all seen that there's cougars, there's penguins, there's all of these other animals that have allegedly died from the bird flu. And that just goes to show this farm does not care about the locals or about their neighbors.
Randy?
Good point, Angie. The outfall of it, they don't care about their neighbors. They don't care about the community itself. It's just always been about them. And throughout all this, it's the grifting, it's the money that they've compiled. And I'm not as good at digging that up and looking into it, but it's got to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I just wonder what's going to happen to that money. Where's it going to go? How's it being spent? Are they going to be held accountable? Is Revenue Canada going to do a deep dive on them when tax time comes? How are they going to hide that money? If they have to, I don't know. But it's always, to me, been about the money. And you started off, Angie, earlier in the program by talking about the historical reference to the farm and the principal owner. And that's always been there. The locals have known it. Local businesses have known it. And it's only carried on up until current times. And it's just, under this circumstance, it's gotten worse and worse. And it's just going to be interesting at the end of the day to see if any of these folks that have been built, donated money, those that have liens, if they'll ever see anything back. I really suspect not. Like you say, too many different tentacles of companies out there, so they can, if they're accountable under this company, the monies can go over here, so they don't. It's untouchable. Yeah.
And Randy, just before Angie comments, I just want to take note of what you just said there. You don't know if people with liens or people who are owed money by the farm will ever be able to recoup. However, there were attempts, or I guess if they had taken the CFIA compensation of $3,000 per bird, then the people who had claims or liens against the farm, that money probably would have gone to them, which is probably one of the reasons. And I can't say for sure what their motivation was at the farm, but if you owe a bunch of people money and you go through that process, and there's every probability that you'll never see the compensation from the CFIA, because that's going to go to the people who you owe money to, then it pays you to go the other way and start taking in donations from people which the government can't touch, which the banks can't touch, and to guarantee those funds and then direct those to the people who are owed the money. So this, to me, explains a lot. Why did they do that? Why did they say, no, thank you, CFIA, or screw you, CFIA, screw you, Canadian government. We don't want your compensation. We're going to fight this. So they go the other way and they start, asking people to donate, and they turn it into a giant circus, and they get the whole freedom machine behind them, the fundraising machine behind them, and the political machine, and a billionaire from New York gets involved, and it turns into this big political thing, and it blows up into this social media thing. And so they really pivoted from food production and pet food production to some sort of a weird research thing where they were trying to make money off whatever that was, to now political activism. And that seems to be the new business model now, where now Katie is on a speaker's tour and has been down even into the United States and has been speaking at conferences, political conferences, right-wing political conferences. She's tied in that way. And the money keeps flowing, and they keep on asking people to donate. And I was very reluctant to even do this interview tonight or to do any of this week for that reason, as you touched on, Angie, is like, if I keep talking about it, it keeps drawing attention to it. But you know why I did this is because the people asking for donations just aren't stopping. They're trying to keep it going. They've got all this stuff on social media going on. And I know that this month they're trying to ramp things up again. Why? I don't know, but they've got something going on. And so if they're going to do that, then I'm trying to provide balance here. And I know that some people have even said to me, well, why do these local people want to talk to you? They're probably just trying to draw attention to it. They're probably on the farm side. It's like, controlled opposition, la, 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 whatever. Well, all I can do is say it's still going on. The Edgewood Ostrich terror continues, which is the thumbnail tonight because it's true. They just won't stop. So here we are talking about it again tonight. What are your thoughts on that, Randy? And why did you decide to come on and talk about this tonight? What were your personal reasons?
Well, Rick, I mean, Angie touched on it at the beginning, and my hat's off to you. Your presentations, your interviews, everything you've done is very balanced, and you're fact and truth seeking, and you've called people out, questioned them, and to the point where those that haven't been able to back up their claims with factual information get frustrated and maybe leave the interview. So I felt, because of your platform, it's a great opportunity to try to get our voice out there. And in a lot of ways, I do agree. If we all just ignored it, it would go away. It'd go away for us here in Edgewood. But, I thought of it a little bit after our initial discussion a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, really, there has to be more of a voice gets out there so people are aware, not just for the folks in Edgewood, but for the folks where this could come to next time, and maybe paint more of a holistic picture on what has gone on here and what it's all about. And it's not about truth. It's not about doing the right thing for animals. It's not about protecting the innocent and the downtrodden from the overreach of government. It's from protecting people and our society from this type of political propaganda, which will only serve to harm our democratic processes we have here. I mean, I'm a true believer in democracy. I vote whenever we have elections, and oftentimes I don't get the party I want, but that's democracy, and I have the opportunity to change that next election or by activism. But when you do activism, you have to do it truthfully for the right reasons, and you have to have a moral compass around you and an understanding of the bigger picture, not about you, not about your situation, but about what's best for people in your community, in your province, country, mankind. And if you can say that honestly, then I think your activism is well needed. So that's why I'm on here tonight, just to try and bring some truth and get the word out there. And I thank you for the opportunity, for the platform to speak this evening, Rick.
Well, that's what we're here for. And Angie, what about you? What's been your motivation through this?
Well, I spoke about the senior that was too scared to go to the doctors. That's when I really shifted and changed. And I'll speak about my dad. He has said numerous times, I don't want to hear the word ostrich. I'm done with this. And so when I called and I told my mom, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to interview this gal. She used to be involved in the satellite ostrich farm. I'm going to tell dad. She's like, do not tell your father anything. Just go and do it. Figure it out the next day. And so I did that. Because like I said, my dad knows about marketing. I've been in marketing and the media for 25 years. So the more we talk about something, other people do get invited to it, right? And I think that just sharing and using my voice to hopefully, and I do not speak for the local Edgewood residents. I've said that from the get-go, but I do use my voice to share information. So for example, I have a local Edgewood resident saying, a reminder, the supporters also were calling for a boycott of the store when they saw the RCMP being served at the store. So there's other little things. Other people are not confident. They don't want the confrontation. Also, people have been harassed and said that someone is going to burn their house down. Those are threats that are made in a small community. If you live in a larger community, you might just, flip the person off and move on. But in rural communities, like, that can happen. And so some people didn't want to leave their homes because they were worried those things can happen. But I just wanted to touch on a few things here to make people think. The land that the farm is on is not their land. They are in an eviction process, and that will go to court in April. We are currently inviting other locals or anyone who has donated and received money back if they would like to have a conversation. We're inviting them here. That's one thing we're doing, Rick. And we do have other locals, other former volunteers, and potentially I have a large donor that's going to be coming on and talking about their experience as well. Mm-hmm. I do want to touch on the fact that a billionaire from the United States offered to pay the legal bills for a farm in Canada, and he's the biggest buyer of Ontario oil. Alberta oil. So I just want people to think about that for a minute. So what is an easy way to shake up our government, to polarize us more? How would someone do that? Just food for thought. And also something that is not public, and I have heard this from a source from the farm, is the farm was going to be claiming bankruptcy just prior to the birds getting sick. So what a great opportunity to do grifting. And so with all of this information, and I'm open to being wrong, but so far I haven't been. And the locals know. The locals have experienced this for decades. And like I said, if I say something wrong or if I misinterpreted something, I'll happily change that. But this is happening. This is the local perspective. And we are going to have more people on here speaking to you, Rick. And I thank you for, giving the locals and myself, a summertime local, the opportunity for more voices to hear this, because it's important. And I don't want a social media mob of 83,000 people bullying a small community of 335. That's just not fair. And I won't stand for it.
Yeah. And you mentioned the billionaire from New York, John Katzimatidis. He used his platform, his radio station, WABC out of New York, which beams into parts of Canada, to fuel a lot of this. He is a MAGA supporter, a Trump supporter. He donates to the MAGA political machine. He does purchase. He is also in the oil business and has a refinery, and he is the largest purchaser of Alberta oil. He also owns a large grocery store chain in New York, and he was actively involved in the New York City mayor's race, and Zoran Mamdani opposed to that because of his plan to set up a government-run grocery store chain in opposition or in competition with Katzimatidis. But Katzimatidis has all these other interests, conflicting interests with what was going on out at that farm. Insofar as to say, if he's got his grocery store chain, it's because he's purchasing a lot of poultry products. If he's engaged in Canadian politics, it's probably got something to do with that Alberta oil. And we've got the separatist movement, and we've got the separatist movement as part of the freedom movement, which is, involved in what's going on at that farm. In my view, there's definite foreign interference fingerprints all over this thing. It relates to tariffs. It relates to non-tariff barriers. It relates to supply management in dairy and in poultry. It relates to international trade agreements on ag business. That's what's really going on out of that farm. This, Randy, your community became a flashpoint, a hub of political activism, with a lot of foreign interference, foreign money clearly flowing in from Mr. Katzimatidis and others on the U.S. side to amplify this crazy ostrich story because it was so destabilizing at a time when you've got a president in the United States talking about making Canada the 51st state and engaging in all kinds of propaganda. And you see what he's doing in Venezuela. You see what he's doing with Greenland. And so anybody that can't just connect those dots and see that there's something much bigger going on or has been going on in Edgewood with the ostrich farm, then you have your head in the sand, because this is actually a huge story coming out of a tiny community up there in Edgewood, British Columbia, where they're trying to discredit our government. I'm watching a video today online from a prominent conservative MAGA influencer. I won't give you the name of the channel, but they're portraying Canada as a communist hellhole, which is the biggest, I think that the phrase was like the biggest money laundering, racketeering, criminal country in the world, or something crazy like that. This is how they're trying to paint our country, where they're going to have to come up here and save us with their military, I guess, because our government is engaged in overreach and violating property rights and throwing people in jail who are getting accidentally arrested on purpose in order to martyr themselves online, or to go to the United States and ask for asylum now after being arrested. And they're so oppressed in this country that these people who were arrested got to go on vacation in Panama while they were waiting for their court date to start. And then they came back, but then they skipped out on the court date to go down to the States to ask for political asylum because they're being politically persecuted. Well, that's a bunch of bunk, because what they're really trying to do is help generate this narrative where the U.S. is just going to have to come up here and save us from our communist dictatorial government. And that's what's really going on. That's what the ostrich thing, in my view, is really about. And there's all kinds of evidence to support what I'm saying, and U.S. oil money. Mm-hmm. So get your heads out of the sand, Mavericks and Canadians. It's the Gulf of freaking Mexico. Everybody needs to remember that. As I said the other night, we don't need to arm up. We just need to arm ourselves with the truth. It's the Gulf of Mexico. Just because one guy decides to claim it doesn't make it so. That's a lie. The truth is, it's the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm going to keep on saying that until the day I freaking die, because I'm dedicated to the truth, and I'm dedicated to you. I'm dedicated to the Mavericks. I'm dedicated to the public. That's what this platform is about. It's about serving the people, not some big corporate oil interest in the States, or some billionaire out of New York, or some big hotshot Godzilla nuclear monster in the White House who brings an armada off the coast of Venezuela, or injects political operatives like Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. into some sort of an issue that they've politicized up in Canada, where they've got no business sticking their noses in to begin with, to the point where it damages you, Randy. It damages all the families in Edgewood. It's damaging to our whole country. It's hurting Canadians. So that's what we're doing here. I'm just trying to bring people closer to the truth. And you can have these conversations about these issues like the Cull policy, whether it's working or it isn't. And we can have those discussions. But that's not what was going on at that farm. That's why they're still, to this moment, trying to keep this whole thing alive for the money, and because they've got a political agenda. They're trying to destabilize the country, and that's why Katie Pasitny has been saying that this is ground zero. For her, it is.
Agreed.
She wants to keep it like that. It's a political ground zero because they just dropped a political nuclear bomb right in the middle of Edgewood, British Columbia, and it's hurting you folks. And they weren't giving you a voice. That's why I brought you on tonight.
Appreciate it.
With that, I'll just throw it over to you guys for a very final thought. It's getting up to near the top of the hour. We're going to wrap this thing up, and I'll tell you, we're going to do more of this in the nights ahead. Angie, first you, and then because Randy is, a local stakeholder there, we'll give him the last word.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you again. And if people are listening and they're questioning and you want the documents, my suggestion, if you go to Universal Ostrich Farm Exposed on Facebook, there is a group there. You will have to share some information to get in there. And the ladies that run that, they have all of the backup information. They have the court documents. They have the fact that today, 17 years ago, the large barn fell down and injured and unalived 35 birds. They have, the history of the entire farm. And I highly recommend, if you are questioning anything, that you go and have a look at that and be open-minded, because it's a different time for news. It's a different time for resources, and everyone can complain about the media all they want, but it's the social media, in my opinion, and us sharing misinformation that has fueled all of this. To 83,000 mob followers who blackballed businesses, mom and pop shops, large organizations like Sunbelt. We have Barry & Sons in Penticton, another trucking outfit, and they harassed 19-year-olds and 21-year-olds that were answering phones at hotels. And I just think that is wrong. And if it was my friend or family, I would fight for that. I'm all about freedom of speech. I'm all about freedom of expression. But when you're an absolute asshole and you don't care about your neighbor, that is why a community of 335 people, there is no more than 20 people in that community that support that farm. And we will talk to some others going on later this week who don't support the farm, but are really important parts of that community.
Randy, final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to take the opportunity to thank you, Rick, for presenting this tonight, and your final synopsis there. I couldn't agree with more. For those viewers that are watching, and some of those that may not agree with me, disagree, that's fine. If you want to threaten me or speak poorly of me, well, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you that's how you have to present yourself. But having said that, if anybody wants to take the opportunity to reach out to me, you can find me, and I don't mind having a conversation about it, because everything I speak is the truth, factual, and I hope thoughtful at times. So just once again, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak out and share, the vast majority of locals' concerns here.
Okay, you guys stick around. I'm going to run our closing tune for the night, but we'll chat in the back room when this concludes. And thank you for your bravery, because it took real courage for you guys to come on here tonight, because I know that the threats are flying. I've been subjected to a fair amount of that myself, but I ain't shutting up. This is Maverick and the News Brothers, folks, with this song dedicated to all those social media influencers out there who I used to respect until you took the cash. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
Didn't pick this They sell us out for a tax cut deal. Shake his hand while they rob and steal. They call us blind, they call us weak, but they're the ones on their knees to the thief. Wave our flag while they burn it down, marching to the sound of a tyrant's crown. They ain't patriots, they're bought and sold. Trade our land for American gold. Singing his tune, dancing his way, but they'll cry for Canada when it's too late. Yeah. Trump traitors, selling us out, burning our home for a tax break now. They stand with the wolves, spit on the brave, but they'll beg for Canada when it's in its grave. They talk real tough, but they bow real low, licking his boots while they put on a show. They chant his name, raise their fists up high, while the real ones fight to keep us alive. They don't fight fair, they twist the truth, say they're the future, but they kill the roots. They laugh now, but watch them run when the north wind howls and justice comes. Traitors, selling us out, burning our home for a tax break now. They stand with the wolves, spit on the brave, but they'll beg for Canada when it's in its grave. One day soon the tide will turn, and traitors pay when the fires burn. No statues raised, no banners flown, just names in dust where the traitors roam. Traitors, selling us out, burning our home for a tax break now. They stand with the wolves, spit on the brave, but they'll beg for Canada when it's in its grave. Trump traitors! Trump traitors! Trump traitors! Trump traitors! Trump traitors! Shame.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.